Welcome to Everyday Greatness, and thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Barnaby Howarth. You will have noticed a slightly different introduction to this series. We're coming to you as a panel discussion series, thanks to our co-producer, Stronger Than My Excuses. They're the panel discussion experts, so we called on them for this series, so we could offer 3 professional panels for our podcast and YouTube channels. We're coming to you from West Tigers Centre of Excellence, and we want to thank the entire team here at West Tigers for hosting us in this incredible facility. It's truly stunning and a pleasure to be recording here. And how bloody good does this tiger look on the back wall, by the way?
Fantastic.
I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today, the Wongal people of the Darug Nation. I love being Australian, so I want to thank our Indigenous brothers and sisters for walking hand in hand to make this a better country. Before we officially kick things off, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors and supporters whose logos you will have seen running across your screens at various times in this episode. I'd especially like to thank the major sponsor of Everyday Greatness, the ARA Group. They've sponsored every season of Everyday Greatness for 7 years straight, so thank you to Ed and Leo and all the group at the ARA. I'd also like to thank the crew at Look Studio Australia for recording the show and all of your technical expertise. Right, now let's get this show on the road. This series is about winning fairly in business, sport and life. And this is our 3rd episode, which will focus on winning fairly in life. I'm excited to introduce our esteemed guest, 1990 Women's ASP Surfing World Champion Pam Burridge. Pam, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Former Socceroos captain Paul Wade. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And Managing Director and owner of Sport and Life Training in Melbourne, David Burt. David, thank you for your company.
Thanks, Barnaby.
Welcome to the show, everybody. We're here to talk about winning fairly in life. And we want to start at the beginning and ask the question, why? People who've achieved success at the highest levels of sport often have an intense drive to win. But how does that translate to winning fairly in life? Do you need to win in life, or is giving life the best crack you can, whether you win, lose, or draw, enough? Let's start with 1990 Women's Surfing World Champion Pam Burridge. Pam, you were a world champion surfer. How did you separate that intense drive to win as a surfer to just being a good human being in life?
Well, okay. So, yeah, that really intense drive to win was like my single-minded focus to be like the best surfer I could be. And then that translated into trying to be a world champion, which I had lots of failed attempts at, which was really good for me in the long run, by the way. But that real focus and single-mindedness can be detrimental to living a balanced life and being balanced in a lot of areas in your life. So I find that separating that drive to win into its box and what I could achieve, and then looking at myself and where that didn't translate well into my day-to-day life was really important for me. And I only did that because I had to, because I was creating too many problems and too much pain. I'm the kind of person that seems to not get away with much in my own life. I don't know if it's my own standards or just aware the consequences, or that's an insight. That's an insight. So whatever is fair in your mind and actually in your morals is going to be in there. And if I find I'm really uncomfortable for a period of time and I keep thinking about something, I'm probably against my own morals somewhere in some way, or there's something I have to rethink or something like that. So, it's taken a lot of, tries and fails and re-goes to get there. But, I think anyone can get there if they're willing to look at themselves and see what works for them.
Rock solid gold. Just as a side note, I'm a bit fanboy sitting here talking to Pam Burridge. Pam's journey through her surfing world championship was one of the most inspiring things I'd seen as an upcoming Australian athlete. I didn't know how to behave as a man, and it was attitudes like yours, Pam, that showed me, so thank you for your wisdom. Now let's ask David Burt about sport and life training. David, why did you think it was important to start a business called Sport and Life Training?
Well, we're a not-for-profit, and one reason to not start it was to make money, so that wasn't the motivating factor. But at the time I was working in the TAC Cup with the club called Eastern Rangers. So they were aspirational, 18 and 19-year-old boys wanting to get drafted. And in 2013, we won a premiership by over 100 points, and 4 boys got drafted, but 41 of them didn't. And I watched a lot of them really fall away in terms of their coping with life. And as I spoke to them, I realised that so many of them had gone through the journey of being put on a pedestal because of their ability. And so many of their coaches and friends and teachers had said, you're going to play AFL. And when they didn't, they felt like they'd let everybody down. And often they hadn't put enough, I think, effort into other aspects of life. They were resting on their laurels as young sports performers. And so I started writing some courses for them, and a few other clubs heard about it, and we started going into those clubs and doing that. And it grew from there. But I think when I look at sport, there's so much that's good and that we can utilise and take into life, that the skills of courage and commitment and good communication under pressure and so on. But there's some blind spots too. And so we set up SALT to try and address some of those blind spots that I might talk about later on.
Very good point. There is some real inspiring stuff to come out of sport. Now, Paul, let me speak to you about it as a former Socceroos captain. Working out whether you've done things right in sport is easy to find out the results. You either win or lose. How do you work out whether you're doing life right? Is there any measurement you can rely on to tell you?
I don't know whether there are only 2 scenarios, win and lose. For the amount of effort that goes into sport, we can lose, but when I look at it, I was a winner. And let me give you an example of that. We played Yugoslavia at the Olympic Games in 1988, and we won the game, fine, but I didn't really play a part in the winning. But my job was specifically on the other side of the ground because one of their players was so good that he kept coming down. I hardly touched the ball, but the impact I make when I think about it, it was, wow, yeah, they didn't get a touch either. And a lot of that was because of what I did. So it's not about winning to me, it's about making a difference. And I made a difference on that day doing absolutely nothing.
Well, I'm pretty sure you would have done a few good things. So when I was a young bloke trying to make sense of the world, one of the most important people besides Pam Burridge that showed me how to play fairly in sport and life was a guy named Tim Noonan. Tim was a fellow on-baller at the Pennant Hills Football Club, and I was always amazed at how he wanted to win so passionately every time he walked out there. And he competed like an animal. I was always amazed at how often he'd be the last bloke we picked up off the bottom of a pack. He was always the first one in and the last one out. Tim had a stroke and passed away recently at just 50 years of age while he was working in Japan. But the way he carried himself as a human being meant that a bunch of his old teammates from the Pennant Hills Demons went out for a beer in honour of Tim. And for me, that's like you were saying, Paul, it's not about winning or losing. To me, that was success. Tim taught me that life is a marathon, not a sprint. That you should be good to people on the way up because you'll meet them again on the way down. Playing fairly in life is about how you want to be known in 10 years' time, not about the short-term results you're after today. Right, soapbox away. Next question. So values-based things like integrity, respect, and fairness are so hard to measure. Why do people think they're so important? Especially when a lot of people say we're here for a good time, not a long time. Doesn't devoting so much time to things that can't be measured just get in the way of that short-term success? Let's hear from David on this one first. David, if people want to just win, how do you try and convince them that doing it fairly is important?
I think I'd probably refer back a little bit to what Paul said, and it's about redefining what you think winning is actually about. And I think it's really interesting because we talk to really successful sports people like yourselves, and I was talking to you earlier about what happens after that and how is your life now. And sometimes people can be very successful within their sport and then have to fight some real demons when they come out of sport because they realise that to win in life is far more important than to win in sport. So I think that sport is this wonderful training ground for life, but we have to ask ourselves, what is our why? And I don't know if you know the Simon Sinek model, but he talks about the why, the how and the what. We all know what we do. We play our sport, we surf, or we play soccer, and we spend a lot of practice time in getting better at how to do it. But the why changes, and if you start looking at parents when they put their kids into sport at 5 or 6, it's all about fun and health and socialisation and all the good things. But at 15 or 16, it's all about talent squads and badges of honour because their kids are as good as they are and they want to tell you about that. And we start changing that whole why, and kids start to drop out of sport, and that's a loss for our society. So I think we have to look at what winning means. And I think ultimately it means that we're setting people up to have successful lives through creating great environments in sporting clubs. And you might win or you might lose, but that's going to be fairly forgotten in the future.
Very true. I just need to pick you up on one thing. I don't think anybody plays soccer. They play football, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
Did I say soccer?
I was.
Soccer.
Yeah.
I said it earlier too.
I'm a Victorian. I'm so sorry.
Now, let me turn to the former soccer captain of Australia, Paul Wade. Paul, thank you. Paul, you would have been tested and challenged on your principles quite often at that elite level in national sport. How did you respond when how did you remain respectful and fair when people would try to drag you down to a bit of a murky playing field?
Yeah. As far as football goes, there were no player associations in those days. You were up for every decision you made for yourself. And I was asked by the players one day, we were just about to play an international, and they came to me as the captain and said, "Hey, Wadey, we want more money." And I went, "Okay, I'm going to get you more money." So I went to Football Australia and said, "Can we have more money?" And they said to me, "We haven't got any." So I went back to the players and I said, "They haven't got any." And they said to me, "Well, we're not playing." And I went, "Oh, okay." And so we're not playing. And they said to me, "Tell us who's not playing and they can go home." And on that traveling between the two, I thought to myself, I'm going to play. I'm not about money. I'm about representing I don't earn any money. And so I said to all the players, I'm playing. Who's going to follow me? And everybody at the end of the day went, yeah, all right. So that guy who trying to get more money, he had a very good point. But right at that moment, it was, bit of honesty here, boys. Let's just get out there and play.
Fantastic.
That made me cry a little bit. Now, Pam Burridge, you run a surf school these days and you teach a lot of kids and families. Do you actively teach respect and integrity in your lessons, or is that just the way you roll and you try and set a good example?
Well, yeah, I hope I try to set a good example. But with the surf and surfing, there's a lot of rules that, surprisingly, just to create some order in the lineup and right of way and all that sort of stuff. And if you don't know much about the surf and where the wave's going to break and how it's going to break, knowing those rules doesn't really work. So when people are learning, they can't really figure out how they fit in the lineup, So it's trying to teach them there is a hierarchy in surfing. Sometimes it's really awful and sometimes it's really helpful. So understanding that scenario within the surf is it's just understanding how things roll and not taking offence too much when things happen. But when we all go out there and try and get our waves, as I was saying earlier, if the waves are really good and there's not enough waves for everyone gets super greedy. Or it can even happen at a break where just the locals or the crotchety old guy, usually a guy, might be an old woman like me, I don't know, rules the roost too much and is just hogging all the waves. So it's what I could do out of respect is have the ability to take waves and give some away and sort of give that vibe to the crowd, or just smile. Or it's like when you're driving in traffic and someone cuts you off and you get all, and then I just go to my Indonesian brothers and sisters and I go, they just drive and honk and nobody's upset about it. And I go straight to that. And so I try and use that kind of thing, because you're always out there to get your own wave, your own goodies in life sometimes, and it can translate to anything that you want and you imagine everyone else is trying to take your something. If I can just let that go and then offer some generosity, that tends to go around. So I try and, it's really hard to teach that, but you sort of try and model it. But I've definitely, sometimes I actually do the thing where I want some credit when I don't be mean. So I snake someone, which means I jump the queue, I paddled up the queue, and I'm sitting there and a really good wave's coming, and I'm just shaking. I'm going, okay, it's your wave. I don't take it off them. And it's happened a few enough times that I can tell you about it. But, it's using all my will to try and be, just that person in the lineup. Because once one person gets all snaky and greedy, it's on for everyone. So, I sort of try and teach that, but it's very confusing, and that's why, people come in upset and not getting their way sometimes. So in my school I might teach that, and hopefully in my life I do reflect on my behaviour and just try to keep my mouth shut. That's why I'm silent for a whole day sometimes, because my head's not saying nice things. So don't say it out loud, because it's hard to take that back and then address the behaviour.
Fair enough. A lot of those answers reminded me of some advice my old footy coach used to give us at Pennant Hills. Danny Ryan used to say, focus on the game plan, the result will take care of itself. And that's what I think about trying to win fairly in life. You don't do it with an agenda or an ultimate result in mind. You just live fairly, because it's better not to be a dickhead than to be one. Right, now let's go to the next question. We've talked about winning fairly in business and in sport in our other panels in this series. They tend to have results such as scores and wins and losses or profits to measure outcomes. When it comes to winning fairly in life, though, what can our audience do to know that they're winning fairly in life? What can they do to ensure long-term success in their own lives over simply striving for short-term victories? Paul, let's start with you on this one. What actions did you use to win fairly in sport that you still use today in life?
Wow. I think if you, and I mentioned the word before, honesty, if you can stand there and say, I did my best today, and more importantly, I think we have a responsibility to make other people feel good that they're winning in life. And one of the things I do is, if I meet somebody smaller and they come to me, I used to think about the fact that I had to make myself look like a hero. But after a while, you go, you know what? It's not about me. I want you to feel that you're good and you're winning. So I would say things like, you know what? I should get your autograph now, because when you make it, I'll be able to sell it on eBay. And all of a sudden they think, yeah, all right. And they say, well, what was it like Maradona? And I'll say, wow, what a night we had then, right? How good was that? What were you doing? Boom, it's all back to them. Mm-hmm. So after a while, you don't need to be all about winning and how you deal with it. So I don't know, I'm old. You're not, you two, young pups, but I'm old. I'm experienced. I know stuff.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing the stuff you know with us. Very, very wise. Now, Pan, you grew up competing in a really interesting time in women's professional sport. It's almost taken for granted now that women can do whatever the hell men do. Like, it's just almost a completely level playing field. But when you were younger and looking for guidance when you were surfing, which of your competitors did you look up to as the perfect role models on how to roll in life?
Yeah, when I started competing, so professional surfing, which I went into, was really only born like a year after I started surfing. So it was quite new, and any coverage of the women was really limited. So I didn't get to see like real role models that would transfer to my experience weren't there. But so I was looking more to the men's side because you could see them. And so like guys like Mark Richards, he was 4 times world champion in those early years of competitive surfing. And he like broke the stereotype of the drug-addled surfer. Like he was the clean-cut guy, professional athlete, and could speak to the camera and be quite coherent. It's amazing. So I saw that, and I saw some other pros presenting like a professional kind of thing, because I didn't want to be at that stage. I definitely didn't want to be a surfie, because my experience of that was really hostile. So like surfing in the 70s was very localized, and there was no women virtually. So it was quite confronting when I look back on it, how rough it was. But I love surfing so much, I was going to do it no matter what. So I was in this world that was quite unwelcoming, like going into the front bar, as my mate Jodie Cooper said, and just like, oh, well, I'm not really welcome here. But yeah, and anyway, so yeah, it was like I looked to all different people for role models, and I got the snippets of whatever their strong point was, and like Wendy Botha was a big influence on me once we were more peers and competitors, and she was winning all the world titles, and I hadn't won one yet, so I was looking to her for her professionalism, and she trained with all the footy blokes. That's quite appropriate. We're here, the rugby leaguers, and but yeah, just as you become professional, you're trying to invent it on the fly, really, because there wasn't anyone ahead of us that much. So yeah, I looked to a lot of people in style, but as was mentioned before, if you look too closely at your rivals, then it becomes comparison, and it can be quite stifling. So you have to set your own goal of how good you want to be, and try and drop off the stuff that holds you back from that. And too much comparison was definitely way too much of a hindrance. And so yeah, I do that today too, because we're all comparing way more because of social media and just that all the inputs we have all the time. So just trying to bring it back to, what do I want to do? What is my capacity to do that's beyond even what I believe, because it's in all of us. So I reckon all of us can do whatever we're born to do if we let it.
Very true. Now, I have a question without notice for you.
Yep.
How do you feel these days, knowing that you are one of those role models that you tried to find when you were a kid? People look up to you as someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, it's really humbling, but it's great, to like, I was thrust into the limelight at like 14, 15 as like the face of women surfing, which was pretty damaging to me, to be honest, because I was really young, and to be famous young is not great. And not to have any of the psychologists or the support network or anything. It's just like, out you go. But yeah, to know that helped make it achievable, because if you can see it, you can be it. And now, yeah, women's sports going gangbusters. That's all because of me, obviously. Where's my royalties? They're coming in, I'm sure. But yeah, no, it's really nice. It's really nice. But some of those girls, oh my God, they're out there and they're taking my ways. Gone too far, man.
And it's very much your humility that sets you apart as well. Clearly makes you a great role model because you're so humble. Now, David, let me ask you about sport and life training. You said you do a lot of work in community sports groups. How do you impress on the kids playing community sport that how you win in sport is just as important as winning in general?
Well, I've just loved listening to these world champions that I'm sitting next to, and if I was starting to compare myself with you two, I mean, where would I sit? I got the most improved award in the 3rd Division football team in 1982. Thank you very much. And I work with a whole lot of kids who really believe that the things that they need to strive for are to be popular or good looking or to reach the top of their sporting field. And all of these things are largely outside of their control. And so we have all these kids with problems to do with anxiety and self-esteem and so on. But it's interesting because you listen to a guy like Neil Danaher, who was a great coach and a great player in AFL, but now he's got motor neurone disease and he's dying of it. And he's done more good in the time that he's been dying than he ever did in that time when he was a great sports person. And it's because he's done as you've done, Paul and Pam, and learnt that it's not about you and you defer to others. So there's this speech where he's talking to the Melbourne Football Club before they play Collingwood on Queen's birthday weekend, and there's 80,000 in the crowd and they're about to run out there. And he doesn't talk about football at all. He says there's a continuum. Up this end is selfish, and up this end is selflessness. And every one of you is somewhere on that continuum. And don't bother telling me where you think you are, because your teammates know. They know by what you do. And what he's doing there is he's completely reversing what it means to be successful. And when we're working with these kids, we say, you may not be able to control how far you get in sport. You can try your best. You're not going to be able to control what boys think of you or what social media says, but you can control your values, your friendship choices, and the most important thing you can control is your kindness towards others. And actually, that's what your friends are looking for. They're looking for where you are on that continuum, selfish to selfless. And if you pursue that, then you end up winning, even if you only play in the Basin Reserves in 1982 and get most improved award.
That's a very cool story, mate. I really love that story of Danaher. Now, I just want to wrap this topic up These three incredible guests sitting here next to me are all the reassurance I need that winning fairly in life is worth it. Paul Wade captained the Socceroos, which is another discussion that they're called the Socceroos, not the football roos, but we'll roll with it, and played against Diego Maradona. But I met Paul through my old AFL club, the Pennant Hills Demons. We didn't become best mates, but we got along okay and respected each other. So when I asked him to come on today's panel discussion, he just clicked his fingers and said, "Sure, I'd love to join you." And here he is, in the flesh. Pam Burridge, I rang through her surf school. There was a mobile phone number on her surf school website. I thought I'd just give it a call and speak to the receptionist and ask if Pam had come on. And the voice said, "Hello, Pam speaking." And I said, "This isn't Pam Burridge, is it?" She said, "Yeah." I think Pam is a huge deal. And she was so incredibly gracious, and we chatted about all sorts of things on that phone call. And even though we didn't know each other from a bar of soap, when I asked her to be our guest today, she said, "I have to move some things around, but sure, I'd love to join you." And again, in the flesh, Pam Burridge. David Burt was my good friend's teacher at school. And my mate said I needed to get David on my show. So I rang David and asked him to join me. And he thought so highly of my mate and his sister that he just trusted their judgment and said he'd fly out from Melbourne to join us as a guest. So again, David Burt in the flesh. Life is really hard, but playing fair in life makes it just a tiny bit easier. So it's all worthwhile every step of the way. Now, lastly, I want to ask our panellists, these three incredible people in front of me, for your one word to wrap up the actions we've spoken about today. What's the one word that's an action that viewers can take away from this chat? Let's start with you, Pam. What's your one word people can take away?
My one word is breathe.
Very nice. Did you get that from your Indonesian friends?
No, be here now, right? Because the now is when you can make a difference. If someone else has an action word, that would be good too.
Very true. And Paul, let's get your one word.
I was going to say respect, but then I thought to myself, nah, it's honesty. Be honest with yourself and everybody around, especially in a team environment. Honesty.
Very nice. David, your one word?
Potential. If I was going to get a tattoo, it would say potential, but I'm too cowardly to get a tattoo. But I think in every kid, there's the potential to be something special in terms of the way they conduct their lives. And I think it's the most undertapped resource in the world is the potential of who people might one day be if they get the right inputs.
Very cool. And my one word for today is marathon. As Tim Noonan used to show, life is a marathon, not a sprint. So don't sweat the big stuff. Don't worry about the things you can't control. Just take care of the things on your plate right in front of you. Be kind to people, breathe, respect people, and things tend to work out more often than not. I want to thank Pam, Paul, and David for joining me on Everyday Greatness today. Thank you all for your incredible wisdom and the actions for our audience to walk away with. Thank you all for watching. Thanks again to our wonderful venue, West Tigers Centre of Excellence, and our major sponsor, the ARA Group. Here's a little bit more about ARA Group.
Every day, we're here for you. We get things off the ground, keeping you connected. We're here keeping you safe and secure. We keep things running smoothly and know the importance of giving back. Every day, we're here. ARA. Here for you. Here for good.
Thanks to all of our sponsors and supporters whose names you've seen running across your screens this entire episode. And thanks again to our guests, Pam Burridge, Paul Wade, and David Burt. Thank you guys all for joining us. And remember, you can watch us on YouTube or listen to our podcast on Everyday Greatness or Stronger Than My Excuses. And please share this show with anybody you think might benefit from watching it. Watch out for the other 2 episodes in this series, Winning Fairly in Business and Winning Fairly in Sport. We hope you've enjoyed today's show and that we've helped you realise that you can play fair in life and still win. I'm Barnaby Howarth. Thank you for watching.